John, welcome to this conversation across the continents. Uh, Thank you for joining me around the second aspect of the rule of life that members of the Iona community keep, and for having this conversation with me, how the rule features in your own life. But before we get into that, I wonder if you could introduce yourself briefly, a bit of background, and also where you are. I can see it on your screen, Milwaukee, USA, but where is that?
All right. John Dillon, born originally in Glasgow, emigrated to the US in 93, I think it was. Yeah, 93. I've been working as a pastor with the Presbyterian Church USA, served congregation for a couple of years on a Native American reservation in North California, then moved down to the San Francisco Bay Area. Briefly, an unhappy period in Arkansas where I was hired to do social justice work for a congregation, but that upset the local branch of the KKK, who got quite threatening. Then we moved to Florida, then Maryland, then Illinois, where I served the congregation for 13 years. And then on July 1st of 2023, this year, I retired, and I am now an honorably retired Presbyterian pastor. And we moved to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Milwaukee, the famous beer capital of the States. It's on the west coast of Lake Michigan. It's only about 85 miles north of where we lived before, so we're still able to discreetly keep in touch with friends without getting re-involved in my old congregation. And I'm at a moment of transition because I'm trying to adjust to being retired. I'm trying to find new outlets for my energy and for my commitments. So that's
And
where we
part
are.
of your commitment has been to be involved with the Iona community. How long is that going back?
I joined the community in '83, so quite a long time now.
1783, right?
Yeah, no, not quite. And here now in the States, I'm on the board. I'm president of the board of the New World Foundation, although we've changed our name a little bit because that's a bit insulting to a lot of indigenous peoples. But we have formed a board, the Iona Community North America, which represents the community in America and Canada, and we actually go as far as Cuba. We promote and engage with members and associate members, and we try to encourage regional groupings. These days, often on Zoom, but with most of them meet at least once a year in person. A lot of it is to do with geography because the distances are vast. And Ruth also recruited me to the new members advisory group as the North American rep, since we've got a number of newly hallowed and in training new members on this side. So keeping involved.
So it sounds like some of your time is already being very purposely filled. Thank you for sharing that and giving us just a bit of context of where you are and how you are involved with the Iona community. So when we look at the second aspect of the rule of life, it says something like working for justice and peace, wholeness and reconciliation in our localities, society, and the whole creation. And I am wondering, in view of the various conflicts that are going on across the globe, and also in the face of a climate crisis, how do you live out your commitment to justice and peace where you live yourself in Milwaukee?
Okay, that's a big one. And as I say, I'm in a moment of transition. When I was in Illinois, it was actually relatively easy. My congregation was extremely dedicated to social justice issues. For at least 10 years, we were the only Presbyterian church in our presbytery that was open and affirming even before it was allowable. The congregation had a history of rule breaking on that issue. We were also the only certified green environmental congregation. We also had a very active Living Waters program where we raised money and sent a team down to various Presbyterian churches in rural Guatemala to help them build water purification systems for their villages. We were also very active in visiting immigrant detainees. The immigration service here rents jail space in county jails, and our county jail just happened to be one of the biggest. And of course, we were involved in things like the food pantry and all the rest of it. Personally, I did do hands-on work at the food pantry in the jail, and I was the chief spokesperson within the presbytery church, within the structures, going to presbytery meetings, committee meetings, and even the General Assembly, and speaking up on some of these issues. But most of my justice, peace, and environmental concerns, they were executive in function. I was enabling the congregation to be involved in all of these things. I decided, well, having retired, moved to a new state, a new city, a new situation, I lost all of that. So I have been looking around, and I was also keen to get my hands dirty again and not do any kind of, being on a board or anything like that. So I have become very involved recently here in two projects. One is called the Trickle Bee Cafe. It happens to be about 5 minutes walk away from the house. I found it by accident. It's part of a big move here in Milwaukee on tackling food instability. I've never been in a city that has so many free community gardens and food pantries as this place. And it also has a small group, and the Trickle Bee is one of them. It's a vegan cafe. Pay what you can if you can. And I volunteer in there once a week, mainly chopping vegetables and helping cook stuff in advance. The congregation we have joined is, well, first of all, it's really refreshing to be sitting in the pew rather than up in the pulpit. It's wonderful. But they're very involved in an organization called Common Concern. It's a Milwaukee-based 43 churches, non-profits, and a couple of small businesses got together and decided that together they had a stronger voice than individually. So they choose a topic, a wrong in our city, and they tackle it as best they can. They did do a campaign before we got here on gun violence with reasonable success. And they also tackled reckless driving, which is a major problem in Milwaukee, where all road rules are advisory. Red light means nothing, and a speed limit doesn't exist. And even being on the right side of the road is optional. So it's quite wild. But the big project at the moment, which I've been involved in, we have a housing authority which houses disabled veterans and elderly. It's council housing. It's state funded and federal funded housing, subsidized housing for the least of us. The local housing authority is a shambles. They have been slammed nationally for ignoring all safety regulations, Most of their apartment blocks, the heating doesn't work. They're vermin infested. They have trouble with prostitution and drugs in the public areas. They have a lot of mold and leak problems and dangerous electrical things. And strangely enough, by an accident of history, housing authorities here are not accountable to anyone other than themselves. So Common Concern has been running a campaign to get the federal government, which spends something like $500 million a year to Milwaukee, to pay attention about how their money is being squandered. And we have also just managed to persuade the city of Milwaukee to start doing health and safety and building inspections in these properties. So I have been at multiple demonstrations, and Common Concern has been adopting an attitude of overcrowding every council meeting and every council committee meeting. And I'm getting pretty familiar with the back corridors and the meeting rooms of the city council building, which I've been enjoying quite a lot. And then on a personal basis, we try really hard to be environmentally friendly and to be very active in recycling, etc., and drive a hybrid vehicle, and we don't fly anywhere, and we try to be as informed as possible about how we vote, but more especially here, how we spend our money, because there are a number of large retail outlets and there are a number of large manufacturers who fund some pretty appalling right-wing policies. And we give money. Our daughter-in-law is a senior organizer with Planned Parenthood, so we're deeply involved in supporting women's rights through Julie. And my wife, Louise, has got herself a new job, and she's a home care nurse for many of the residents in the housing authority buildings. There's a couple of buildings. She has to carry a pepper spray as part of her nurse's kit, because some of them are quite dangerous. And there's at least one building which features frequently in our housing authority discussions. She's never yet managed to get into it, because every time she goes, there's some kind of incident and police at the door and not allowing people in or out, and it's pretty heavy. But we try. I do. When it gets to the bigger things like Israel and Palestine and American politics, I do tend to feel rather impotent. I mean, I can make my voice heard. I can phone a politician, write a letter, sign a petition. I am not aware of any street demonstrations that have happened here in Milwaukee. I suspect next year we will have them, because the Republican Party are having their national meeting here when they will elect their nominee for the presidency. And I suspect there will be a lot of street action then, which I may get involved in. It depends really who's doing it and what they're planning, because it's interestingly enough, they've decided to have their entire conference in the local casino, which is owned by the Potawatomi tribe, and is technically a Native American reservation. And personally, I think we should refuse them entry back into the United States once they set foot on the reservation. But that's just a little pipe dream of mine. So,
thank you, John. I'm smiling because you were starting your little narrative there, which really shares a very wide involvement with these issues. But you were starting it saying that you're transitioning and you're still looking for some meaningful
Yeah.
engagement. I'm curious to see whether that's burning
Well,
the candle at both ends or you're just got a
I
surplus of energy.
I have found two projects. I'm open to other events should the occasion arise. I am trying to retire and have some time to myself. I'm also
Fabulous. Well,
dedicated.
send us a postcard when that's on the horizon.
Yeah.
John, maybe just to conclude, I wonder
Huh?
whether we could dream a little. So if you allowed yourself to dream, what would a world look like in which the experience of wholeness and reconciliation in our localities, society, and the whole of creation were to become a reality?
I'm going to leave prophecy to the prophets of the Bible. However, something that's been on my mind quite a lot for the last few weeks is that um, we were at service at church a couple of weeks ago, and the pastor preached on that beautiful passage in Isaiah about the lamb shall lie with the lion, and the child shall play over the asp's nest and be unhurt. But he made a very interesting point, which has remained with me ever since. He points out that the only creature named in that passage which has to have a serious change of its personality is the lion, because it says that the lion shall eat hay and graze with the ox. And he pointed out that the ox and the asp and the leopard and the sheep and all the other animals are just left exactly as they are, but the lion, that symbol on our flags and on our national emblems of strength, dignity, and regalness, needs a serious change in its nature. It has to stop depending on its teeth and its claws and learn to eat hay. That has not left me since the day I heard it. That's what we need, is for certain mighty powers and oppressors to have a complete change of heart. And that's why I still have faith and hope, because that's beyond me and you. We can nudge, we can remind, we can challenge, but that kind of change of ontological nature is God work. So I just have to keep praying and hoping. So
that's a
that's
powerful image, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's one to keep turning over and over in one's mind and find those lion aspects in ourselves too, to begin to model something new.
It's a passage I've read a million times, and that one line now, which I had never noticed before, really, has really struck me now.
Makes a difference,
and it is a personal challenge, and a national challenge, and an international challenge. So.
Great. Well, John, on that note, we'll wrap it up here. Thank you so much for giving us an insight, opening a little window into your world, into your corner of the world, and connecting it with a concern that is held Iona community-wide, and that new members are deepening into, and existing members are trying to work out time and again every time they recommit to the community. So thank you for this conversation.
Thank you for asking, and I hope the ramblings of an old member and old man help somebody. God bless, Rob.
Thank you, John.